What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you an update to Burning Abyss. Now this is going to be the control version of that, as I do personally feel that it is the best way to play it, but the best thing about this deck is you have the ability to play a control version or switch it up and go for a blind second OTK version as well, which is really cool and fun for this classic deck. I love the lore behind Burning Abyss, I absolutely love it, that it's the trials of Dante and his Inferno. Absolutely insane, and I do love the interaction this deck can now have involving the Calcab, whatever it may be, Cagna, sorry, and of course the Fire Lake, which I'll talk to you about a little bit later on as we go through it, but I just love the artwork on all of this and how it works. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. With all of that out of the way, we're going to dive headfirst into the profile, show you what we've got, and explain why we've got it. So you're going to be starting off with 3 Seer of the Burning Abyss. Yes, I know it hurts me just as much as it does you that I've got 2 gold and 1 rare. The exact same with the Graphs, I know, 2 supers and 1 rare. But you're going to be maxing out on these. So for those of you unfamiliar with the Burning Abyss cards, the way they work is if you control no spells and traps, you get to special summon the card from the hand, but you can only use one of the effects, and that is either special summon it for free, or if it is sent to the graveyard by any means, you get an additional effect. So Seer lets you special summon one back from the graveyard, Graph lets you special summon one from the deck, but if you use the effect to special summon it while you control no spells and traps, you don't get the other effect. The other downside of Burning Abyss is if you control a monster that is not a Burning Abyss, you unfortunately have to destroy this card, so you do need to be very, very careful. We're playing 2 Farfars, so this one has the effect that if it's sent to the graveyard, you get to target a monster on the field and banish it until the end phase of that turn, so it is a form of disruption. We've then got 2 Skarm. Now, obviously, during the end phase of the turn, you get to add a level 3 Dark Fiend. So more times than not, this is probably like your sacrificial card that you don't mind revealing and summoning down for free. But it's still very good to grind you out, to get you back a starter in the form of something like Tour Guide for the next turn around. But then it does mean you really do need to slow the game down to your pace and not be kind of pushed into an OTK play. We've then got the 1 Alec. Now the 1 Alec is if it's sent to the grave to get a target face-on monster on the field and negate its effects into the end of the turn, which can be very, very helpful when you're utilising cards. So these can be triggered if they get detached as material. They'll also trigger if they're sent from the deck to the graveyard by any means, something like a Fiend Griffin. So if you need to double negate something, this can be very helpful for you. Got the 1 Libic, so if it's sent to the grave, you get to special on a level 3 Dark Fiend monster from the hand, but negate its effects. And in a control deck like this, you're probably going to be having spells and traps on your second turn, so being able to utilise Libic to give you an additional extension can be very important. And on top of that, if you do hard open something like a Farfar, and you've already got a monster on the board that is not a Burning Abyss, you can very easily detach Libic off of one of your monsters, like a Beatrice for example, trigger the effect, summon down Farfar. Farfar would then be destroyed because you control a non-Burning Abyss monster, and then that would allow you to banish one of your opponent's monsters. So it can have cool little interactions like that as well. The 1 Burning Abyss card that I had to dig through my bulk to find because of its now applications is the Cagna. So if it is sent to the grave, you get to send a Burning Abyss spell or trap from the deck to the graveyard. Now you're only playing 1 Burning Abyss spell or trap, and that is of course the Fire Lake of the Burning Abyss. So I'm going to talk about that now rather than later on. So this one, you send 2 face-up Burning Abyss monsters you control to the graveyard, then target up to 3 cards on the field and destroy those targets. Now, the reason this is so good is because we are playing transaction rollback in this control version, and what that's going to allow you to do is the Cagna gets sent, you then Foolish Burial the Fire Lake, and when you're playing transaction rollback, you don't play the cost of sending 2 face-up Burning Abyss monsters you control, you just get to destroy 3 cards on the opponent's field, which is really, really important. So it's a nice little way of being able to clear off your opponent's board, double time, and even if you were to have this set and send 2 to then trigger off both those effects and pop 3, you can then transaction roll back to go again, and then this will allow you to then destroy 3 more cards. So really, really important call on that one. The last of the monsters we are playing is 2 Tour Guide. This is obviously like your ideal starter, but it will get hit with Ashes, Imperms, Veilers, everything you could possibly imagine. But the idea is that Tour Guide straight away can get you a Skarm from the deck, you can get you any of your Burning Abyss monsters from the deck, and because their effects will be negated, you then overlay both, go into Dante, detach the monster, and then because you control a Burning Abyss, the monster that you've detached, like whether it be a Seer or a Graph, will then be able to trigger its effect and come back because of the graveyard. Another way you can help from your board self-imploding is by playing Fiendish Rhino. Now this is obviously something that you might consider as your main normal summon over something like Tour Guide, because you can normal summon a Fiendish Rhino, special, make a rank 3 and off you go. If that wasn't enough that it stops your Fiend monsters being destroyed by battle or card effect, it's really kind of cool in the sense that if this card is sent to the graveyard by any means, you get to send a Fiend monster, a Fiend monster from your deck to the graveyard except itself. So Fiend monster you control except itself cannot be destroyed by card effect or battle, which is really important because it occasionally acts like a mini wall. And the last monster we're playing, because we are playing the control version, is the Batjack. Because milling this to banish this to then get access to any of your trap cards is absolutely insane. So why is the control version so good? Well, it allows you to play cards like Fiend Griefin. So this card is well overdue for a super rare. Target a monster in your opponent's graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, and then you can send a Fiend monster from the deck to the graveyard. So not only does it act like a DD Crow-esque effect to be putting that monster back into the deck, so something like a Snake Eyes Ash, targets off the Flameberg, you can also put back Promethean Princess, but it also then lets you send one of your Fiend monsters, which can be a Scarm Search in the end phase, it could be a Farfar Banish, a Seer Summon from the graveyard, which can bring back Dante, or a Graph that can summon from the deck. So you've got loads more, Alec and everything else as well. Triple Torrential Tribute, because actually using this to clear off your opponent's board and your board is not the end of the world, because technically most of your board can just come back. Like if you've Torrential Tributed and you've got a Dante with a Seer and a Graph underneath or anything like that, you then get to bring one back from the graveyard. You'll use Dante's effect to bring one back, and then you can also utilize the Graph's effect to bring another one back. So you're getting the best of everything for nothing. And then of course what makes this version of the deck tick is transaction rollback. Now the only issue is you never really want transaction rollback to be in your hand. You don't want to set it on the field. You will need to utilize discard cards in order to get this to the graveyard. So you pay half your life points to target a normal trap card in your opponent's graveyard. Very rare that's going to happen, but more times than not, if anything, you'll be targeting an imperm. Great success for half your life points. Not really. But what you will get the ability for is to banish this card from the graveyard and pay half your life points to then target a normal trap card in your graveyard except itself. This effect becomes that effect activated effect, and you can only use one transaction rollback effect per turn. So the idea is you want to get this to the graveyard, whether it be milled off a Dante, whether it be discarded off of cards like Karma Cut, but you get it to the graveyard, and then off the back of that, you're then going to be able to use loads of your trap cards for half your life points for relatively nothing. So what are the other trap cards you can utilize? Well, you can utilize the Destructive Daruma Cannon, very powerful card right now. I personally went with Karma Cut. You can play Dynamiscus if you want to. I just like the idea of being able to discard a card to target a face-on monster my opponent controls, banish that target, and then banish all cards with the same name as that monster from the opponent's graveyard. So if this has gone into a proper grind game and they've got like Snake Eyes Ashes, if they've got Oaks, if they've got Poplars, anything like that, just being able to go, cool, get rid of that, clear it all out, can be quite helpful. Another card that I've decided to play in this one is Dark Sacrifice. Now, you don't have to, but this is mainly for the Tenpai matchup, because more times than not, if I'm setting 3 or 4 cards and they're going to try and go into a Black Rose, I can then have the ability of activating a Dark Sacrifice. So when your opponent activates a card or effect that would destroy a card or cards on the field, negate the effect, and then send one level 3 or lower Dark monster from the deck to the graveyard. So again, that will give you the ability to protect all your back row, as well as then send in a Fiend monster that can then trigger its effect, whether it be a Revival, a Search, or a Banish. And then the other 2 cards that we are playing is the double Phoenix Wing Blast. So this one, again, discard a card, but you target a card your opponent controls and you put it on the top of the deck, rather than banishing it, because that might help them, and rather than destroying it, because that also might help them. But you have the best of everything, and as you can see, you're discarding cards because you're going to want to trigger the effects of your Burning Abyss, as well as being able to trigger the effects or set up cards like Transaction Rollback. The last 2 cards we are playing is the Ghost meets Gel, Masterful Mayakashi Shiranui Saga. So the reason this one's so good is this is one of your ideal targets off of the transaction rollback. So we're going to ignore the first bit of tributing a Mayakashi, because you don't need to do that with transaction rollback. But what this will allow you to do is you can only use one of the effects per turn, but this will give you the ability to banish this card from the graveyard, target one of your banished zombie monsters, return it to the graveyard. Now obviously you don't really need to do that, it's more so being able to apply the effect that neither player can special summon monsters from the hand, deck, or extra deck for the rest of this turn. So that's all you're really doing, is using transaction rollback to copy that part of the effect, not that you're choosing which part of the effect to activate, but the first part is the cost, which you don't pay with transaction rollback. The second part is the activated effect, which is exactly what it comes, and then the second effect is something you're probably not going to ever use, because you're not going to be banishing a zombie. And the last card we play is the one Trap Trip, because this can technically act as a pseudo access to any of your normal trap cards, but you will not be able to activate trap cards for the rest of the turn after you've activated, or you're only allowed to technically activate 1 more. So you're basically using this as a, okay, well, if I have Destructive Drama Cannon right now, I can win this game. So it gives you that ability, rather than playing a 3 and a 3 and a 3 when there's times where you're like, okay, I don't really want this. This just pseudo acts as multiple different options for you, but it is up to you, personal preference. Some people like to go 3 of on all the trap cards. By all means, you can do that. I just quite like having the options of a range of trap cards that might be effective for the environment that I'm taking it to. Moving into the extra deck, so for the extra deck, pretty standard on this one, triple Dante Traveller of the Burning Abyss. I would love to have quarter centuries on these ones, but I'm not the biggest Burning Abyss fan, so I couldn't justify paying out for them. But Dante is what Dante is. Be able to detach your material, mill 3 more cards, and then that's going to allow you to go up to a 2500 attack, and then when it's made an attack, it shifts itself to defense, which is really important. Then, of course, you've got the one Beatrice that you can rank on top, and the Beatrice is how you're going to be able to set up your transaction rollback plays. You've got your Phantom Knights of Breaksword just to give you that bit of an aggression to push over it. You've then also got your one Fortune Tune as your defensive option that you're just going to need to sit on until you make a Zeus and clear the board off. Speaking of, we are playing Downward to get you into Zeus in order to clear a board off of the back of any of your rank 3s. So you've got your Dante, you've got your Fortune Tune, and you've got your Breaksword. And that's mainly going to be if they early imperm or negate these cards in any way whatsoever, then you'll be in a position to just go into a Zeus anyway. The last XYZs that I play is the one Darius? DDD Stone King Darius. So the reason I play this is it requires 2 level 3 Fiend monsters, which is obviously exactly what the Burning Abyss deck is. But what I thought was quite cool about that, and this goes into Yugioh Visor King Deus Machina. And the reason this is quite important is it can be quite useful in a Bell matchup. And for those of you unfamiliar with that, because it will attach the monster, it never hits the graveyard, meaning that the destruction effect will not be able to float, because quite like the Ben 10 versus DD Crow rule, the monster, when it's destroyed, if they've used its effect and you go Device King Machina to take it, it goes as a material, so it's quite useful in order to play that around. Plus, being able to use a monster that can just steal your opponent's cards can be more damaging than actually leaving them to go to the graveyard or anything else. You can take these out, completely flexible. You've got Cherubini that I'm not playing that you can put in here. You've also got Nightmare Phoenix and Nightmare Cerberus. It's just something that I haven't seen a lot of people play, but I thought it'd be like a cool thing to mention because it can put in a decent amount of work. Last XYZ is obviously Typhoon, standard on that one. And then for the Link monsters, we've got the one IP into SP, into Nightmare Unicorn, and then we've got a Borrelsword, because Borrelsword with a Dante, so Dante attacks, and then you can go Borrelsword, shift it to defense, attack, and attack again. So it could be very, very helpful to help you instigate the OTKs. And it's relatively easy to make this because you can just go Burning Abyss, make Dante, Burning Abyss, work your way up into a Borrelsword. And then as long as Borrelsword is like the last thing you can do, you can even rank up the Dante into a Beatrice if you need to as well. But again, the extra deck is slightly flexible, bar the Dantes and the Beatrices being a staple 3 and a staple 1 of right now, because Beatrice is sadly at 1. You're going to be able to utilise it to the max potential. You can play the Dante Pilgrim, which is the fusion monster that will be summoned off of the back of Beatrice, but I feel that it's very, very rare that it ever happens. But if you wanted to, then of course that could be one of the spaces you take out your DDD engine for, if you wish. Anyway, that is it for the entire profile. Like I said, any questions at all, by all means, please put in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. For now, as absolutely always, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.